Hey there. Welcome to Mike's Collection, episode 343. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today, it's going to be a miscellaneous episode. So this is a mishmash of action figures that I've gotten over the last couple of weeks. Some of these figures I might even have had for a month or two. I think most of it's pretty recent. But anyway, as I sit down to film this, it is December 1st, 2024. It's hard to believe that 2024 is almost over. I try and post a new video every week, which really means I've only got about 3 episodes left before I'll be doing an episode to show you what new stuff I got for Christmas. And then I have to do kind of my roundup, the summary, the annual summary video that I usually do, where I talk about things that I hope to see in the coming year and things like that. Plus, I have to do my best action figures of 2024 videos. So I've got all that stuff to do like the tail end of the month. So really, in these next 3 weeks, I have to try and show you all the remaining toys that I got this year. I don't anticipate buying too many more figures in the month of December. I probably will get a few for Christmas. But most of my pre-orders are either not expected until February or something next year. I do have a couple on pre-order at Big Bad Toy Store that still say they're scheduled to hit in December. But if they don't hit until a few days or a couple of weeks into December, I live in Canada. So by the time I say ship my stuff, it probably won't arrive until the new year anyway. So I don't anticipate, unless I kind of impulse buy something, I probably won't be getting too many more action figures. So I have a bunch of G.I. Joes that I still need to talk to you about. So I'm going to do an episode just focused on my new G.I. Joes. I also have quite a bit of Transformers that have been piling up for months. That's them all in the back corner of my desk here. So I still have to review those. I will do a full Transformers video. And this here, as I already told you, this is my kind of catch-all. So I've got stuff from a bunch of different brands. I don't even know if I can fit it all into one episode. I'm going to have to really make sure I don't ramble on the way I typically do. Stick to a couple of minutes on each toy and move on, because there is a lot to cover here. I'm kind of tempted to save the best for the last, but I think I'm going to just start with the big one. So I'm a fan of Super 7, their Ultimate line. I buy some of their Ultimate Masters of the Universe here. I've got some of their Ninja Turtles, some of their Thundercats. I just like the format. And I've been a big fan of their Ultimate Godzilla figures. You can see a couple of them on the shelf here behind me. This big orange one kind of stands out. So I have probably 5 or 6 or 7 of their Ultimates figures. They're expensive, but they're cool. I think they're worth it. I don't think I can afford to collect every Ultimate that they put out, but when they do something unique, I got to pick it up. And this figure here is their Ultimate version of Godzilla -1. So when this figure was first put up for pre-order, nearly a year ago, I think, because the movie came out in late 2023. So I think the figure went up for pre-order right around the time the movie was in theaters. So it's taken almost a full year to get this toy in my hands. And a couple other companies have released their own versions of Godzilla -1 in the meantime. But I think this one looks the best as far as I'm concerned. Now, I haven't held the ones from the other companies in my hand to really do a side-by-side, but in general, I like Super 7's product better than SH Figure Arts and things like that. So anyway, here he is. This is Ultimate -1 Godzilla. Now, to the untrained eye, you might be thinking, well, he looks the same as every other Godzilla I've ever seen. And that's a fair assessment. He doesn't look radically different, like he's still a big gray bipedal dinosaur with dorsal fins and all that sort of stuff. But I think it is a pretty big departure, I guess, from some of the other Godzillas we've seen. It is a pretty radical redesign within the the kind of margins of how far you can stray with Godzilla without making it not Godzilla anymore. Like, I would argue the Godzilla from the 1998 American movie, that kind of went too far outside the lines, and then it wasn't even really Godzilla anymore. They made him too much like a dinosaur. They changed the shape of his face. They changed the shape of his legs. It wasn't really Godzilla anymore. So I think you can only do so much. So within those guidelines, I think this is a pretty cool and a pretty different new design. You won't be able to see it much with me holding it up here in front of you, but I will do a split screen so you can take a closer look at him. But like everything from the shape of his legs, the shape of his like dorsal fins and how big and spiky they are, the shape of his face. He's got kind of just a little stout little nose, I think. The paint job is also unique in that it's got this kind of brown wash over it. So it breaks it up from being just another big grayish black Godzilla. So that's cool. Although, like, I don't know, the brown wash, I think I like it, but it sometimes looks almost a little haphazard about like how it's placed. But supposedly, when Super 7 made this, they did this in collaboration with the film's director. Like there was strict kind of rules placed on them when they got the license to make this toy from this movie, that the director wanted it to be accurate. So they worked with the director, is my understanding, for the sculpting. They worked directly from the digital sculpt of the character as it appears in the movie. A lot of times with these movie figures, companies like Hasbro, they start making the figures based on the concept art, and then the look of the character changes before the movie comes out. So then you've got a toy that doesn't really match up. That's not the case here. This should be pretty much, spot on with what you see in the film. And the film's great if you haven't seen it yet. Even if you're not like a typical Godzilla fan, like my wife really liked Godzilla -1. It's just a straight up good movie. It just recently came out on Blu-ray here in North America. I picked up my copy and I started watching the bonus features and stuff. There's some good stuff on there. Anyway, this is a really cool toy. He's big, he's detailed, he's sharp. You have to be careful about holding him from the back because these really kind of hurt your hands. They feel delicate. These fins seem kind of brittle, so I would not want to handle them too much. I feel they could break off pretty easily. They have released a couple other versions of this. They did one what they called -1 color, because the film was actually re-released in theaters in just black and white as kind of an homage to the original black and white Godzilla film. So they called that film -color. So there is a -color variant of this figure. But as you can imagine, it's probably not that different because this guy is mostly gray anyway, but it doesn't have any of that brown wash on it. So yeah, I didn't need that one because, as I mentioned earlier, these figures are not cheap. If this was a $20 figure, yeah, maybe I would have bought the -color one as well. But at this price point, I was like, yeah, this is sufficient. Now, they have since put up another one for pre-order, which is the powered-up version of Godzilla. So all of his dorsal fins, I think, are sculpted in glow-in-the-dark blue plastic. And the spikes are actually protruding even further. Because if you've seen the movie, when he powers up, in most Godzilla movies, usually his fins just glow. But in this movie, they kind of like grew out of his back like dramatically. So the fins on the new version are more protruding and they're glow in the dark, which is cool. But again, I didn't need that one either. If I'm going to have one Godzilla -1 in my collection, I'd rather have just kind of as he appears on screen, just one generic version. Now, if they start releasing Godzilla -1s in, say, the ReAction figure style, which are smaller, easier to fit on the shelf, and more affordable to collect, then I'd be all for buying glow-in-the-dark fin ones and different color ones, black and white ones, all that sort of stuff. But for now, this Ultimate is pretty great. He did come with an interchangeable head. This one that I've got him with right now is the open mouth. There is a closed mouth one. I think that might be all he came with. He might have come with alternate hands. I don't recall. I don't see them laying around here. But anyway, this Godzilla doesn't really need much. If anything, I think it would be cool if every Godzilla figure came with like a couple of little buildings that he could step on. But none of these Ultimate figures have ever come with those in the past. So if I had one gripe, like all the Godzilla Ultimates, I wish it had a hinged jaw so you could just open and close his mouth with the move of just a move of a little joint instead of having to pop his head off. Super 7 has said they do that for aesthetic reasons, but every other company makes Godzillas that open and close their mouths, so I don't know. I think I've heard that they're going to adjust that for future figures. They're going to start adding the articulated jaw. So that's good news. Anyway, I've probably already talked about this guy longer than I should, but this probably is the most impressive figure that I'm going to show you today, so I thought he deserved a little bit more time. But there you go. Ultimate -1 Godzilla from Super 7. Now we'll stick with Godzilla for a minute. I was in GameStop the other day, and I fell victim to the impulse buy. They have a lot of blind box figures kind of in the lineup for the checkout at GameStop from a bunch of different brands. Usually I don't pay much attention to blind box stuff. But anyway, they had these Godzilla blind boxes, and they're from Funko, the company that does the Funko Pops. But they're in a unique little style. This is called the Mystery Minis. So I have, I think, one Mystery Mini in my collection right now. I have a Wolfman from Universal Monsters. So they've done multiple brands in this style. It's kind of short, deformed, cutesy style, but he doesn't have the big exaggerated heads like Funko Pop. Anyway, I was in line. I saw this there. I picked it up. I looked at the back. There's some really fun characters. The only problem here is Godzilla, Mechagodzilla, Mothra, some of those main, most well-known characters, they are 1 per 6. So 1 in every 6 boxes, you're going to get one of those guys. But some of the characters I would have been more interested in, like Destroya or Biollante, Space Godzilla, those guys are up like 1 in 36 and 1 in 72. So the odds are not great at getting some of those other kind of the characters that you don't get all the time. Like I've got a ton of Godzilla figures in my collection in various scales, but I don't have very many Destroyas or Space Godzillas and things like that. So I said, you know what? It's $9.99. I'm going to go ahead and get one. So I bought one, and I went out into the mall, and I sat on a bench, and I opened up the little box to see who I got. And I got this Anguirus. It's very cute. It's a bipedal version of Anguirus. He's a character that usually walks on his 4 legs. But yeah, this guy, he's pretty adorable. I found myself a little bit more smitten with him than I expected to. I was like, damn, that's cute. I think this is cuter than a Funko Pop. The fact that he doesn't have a big giant head makes it easier to display him. I don't need much space at all. I could kind of tuck him in anywhere. He would fit with my Godzilla ReAction figures, kind of just off to a corner there. So anyway, I thought he was really cool. So much so that I was like, you know what? Why don't I go back and try my luck one more time? Maybe I'll get one of the rare ones. So I went back right away, spent another $10, and I got Godzilla, which is the primary figure. So no big surprise there. But both Anguirus and Godzilla are listed as 1 per 6. So even though I think they're really cute and I wouldn't mind getting more of them, the odds are not in my favor. Even though $10 isn't a lot, it's more than I want to spend to just get a duplicate and then just have multiples of the same thing on there. If the characters were all like an equal percentage, if it was 1 in 6 for everybody, I would have maybe taken a chance. But it seems way more likely that I'm going to get a second Godzilla instead of getting like a Destroya or somebody. So I think Anguirus and Godzilla are just going to have to be solitary little mystery minis in my collection. But they're pretty fun. And I'm glad I got Godzilla and not like Mothra, because then I might feel compelled to keep trying. It's hard. It's kind of weird to have a couple of Godzilla characters in a new scale and not have Godzilla himself. So if I was going to get anybody, I guess I'm glad I got Godzilla with my Anguirus. So yeah, those guys are pretty fun. Next up, we'll stick with Godzilla again. So my brother Brian, who I've talked about on this channel quite a few times, he lives in Miami, and I will often ask him to buy me figures that are like exclusive to Target stores or Walgreens stores, because we don't have Targets or Walgreens up here in Canada. So I will ask him to pick up stuff and then bring it home with him next time he visits. Brian was recently in Japan, like about a month ago. And I asked him, I was like, I'm sure you've got things to do in Japan to keep you busy. But if you happen to be in a mall or something and you see some Godzilla merchandise, please let me know. And it would be cool to get a Godzilla figure that's exclusive to Japan or something like that. So the first day he was there, and I believe he stayed in the hotel that's got a Godzilla on the outside of the building. Now, he's not really a big Godzilla fan or anything, but he appreciates some of this nerdy stuff, and like that's pretty cool. No matter who you are, to stay in a hotel that's got a big life-size Godzilla on the side of the building, like sculpted on the building. So I believe that's where he stayed. Anyway, so he sent me pictures of basically a gumball machine, and they had little Godzilla figures in the bubbles. And he's like, "Do you want me to get you some of these?" But the characters inside were from the new Godzilla X Kong movie. So I'm not sure if they're the exact same figures that you can buy here in America in like blind boxes and stuff, but it didn't really look particularly unique, nor did it look particularly Japanese. So I was like, no, I'm kind of looking for something a little funkier. And then he came back and he sent me a picture of, I think it was like a Godzilla Kleenex box. So it was like a plastic Godzilla head, and the Kleenexes came out of his mouth. And there was two different versions. So it was like more like a 60s Godzilla and like a 90s Godzilla. And even though I thought they were kind of fun, and honestly, in hindsight, maybe I should have got one. But I thought, you know what? I collect action figures. Some people make the mistake of thinking like, well, Mike's a nerd. He likes anything nerdy, so we can buy him like Spider-Man bubble bath, and we can buy him a Godzilla dish towel. I don't really need everything in my life to be nerdy like that. I like toys. So when he sent me the Kleenex box holder, I was like, that's cool, but I'm really looking for more unique action figures. So if you see something weird, like a purple Godzilla or a glow-in-the-dark Godzilla, something that's a little out of the ordinary, I'm thinking more like kind of soft vinyl figures. So I said, yeah, keep your eyes peeled for those. If you don't find anything, don't worry about it, but that's the kind of thing I'd be looking for, something a little bit more unique in the action figure realm. Anyway, he went to Japan. Then he came back home to Miami. Then my mom and my sister went down to visit him in Miami, and they came back and they said, we brought you back what Brian had bought you in Japan. So I was like all excited. I'm like, ooh, is it a cool new Godzilla action figure? He got me a Godzilla snow globe. Now, that's cool. It's kind of neat. It's a little outside of my wheelhouse for what I collect. I'm not really sure where I'm going to put it. Because, I don't think it really fits on any of the shelves in here. Plus, it's not even Christmassy. Like, if it was Godzilla and there was snow and maybe he was wearing a Santa hat, I would, happily put it up on my mantle to decorate for Christmas, and then I would box him up every year and take him up for Christmas. But this Godzilla is, I won't bother taking him out here, but you'll see it in the split screen. It's pretty generic in that it's got a black base. It says Godzilla. It's not based on any one particular film or anything. And then it's just got the Godzilla in there. There's no little buildings or any little scenery. And then it's got black, I guess what would be ash. So you shake it up and the little ash, kind of all flutters around and then drifts to the bottom. So it's cool. But since it's not Christmassy, it's not the kind of thing I can just put up with my Christmas stuff. Which, by the way, my wife finished putting up our tree just today. We have a beast of a Christmas tree. It's this 12-foot high tree. It's ridiculous. Anyway, so the tree is up. So my house feels very Christmassy now. When you go upstairs, she's got lights up. She's got kind of garland all over the banisters and everything. Very nice. She does a very good job. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. It's probably going to get displayed somewhere not in this toy room. It'll probably go upstairs on a bookshelf in our living room. I try not to let my nerdy stuff migrate upstairs too much, but I just don't really know what else to do with it. So anyway, that's cool. So thank you, Brian, for the snow globe. Now, another thing that he got me just to kind of, as a joke gift, was this homoerotic manga comic book. So I was like, this is not something I had asked for, but yeah, it's just a bunch of like leather daddies and bondage stuff. And I'm not really into manga, so this is my first time having a manga. And like, yeah, you read it backwards as opposed to like an American book, and the text is written sideways or down top to bottom. It's weird. Anyway, so this was I guess a fun little gift too. So thank you, Brian, for that. Now, while my mom and my sister were in Miami, my sister actually picked me up a souvenir herself, just from Miami. And this is kind of cool. I kind of mentioned Funko Pops earlier. I have a lot of them, but I'm trying not to purchase them really anymore. I have more than I know what to do with. They're kind of all in boxes and they're double stacked against my wall. So when you go into my den, it looks like a retail store because there's like Funko Pops stacked like 2 or 3 deep, stacked floor to ceiling. So I don't know what to do with them. I really got to stop buying them. But anyway, she picked me up this Toucan Sam Funko Pop, and I thought this was pretty cool. I think Toucan Sam was done very early on when they were doing Funko Pops, and I actually had considered getting him back in the day, but didn't, because in the very early days of Funko Pop, I just thought these were like the latest fad that was going to go away in like a year, like Mighty Mugs, and there've been lots of kind of little super deformed little cutesy things like this that have just come and gone. I didn't know Funko Pops was going to become this decade long thing that's still going strong, and that I would end up with a huge collection of them. So if I had known that, I definitely would have bought Toucan Sam back in the day, because I love Toucan Sam. When I was a teenager, I used to collect Toucan Sam memorabilia. I had like anything I could find with Toucan Sam on, and there wasn't a whole lot of Toucan Sam stuff around. But like if I could get a T-shirt with Toucan Sam, if I had socks with Toucan Sam, yeah, you know what? I wasn't even planning this, but I just realized I think I'm wearing my Toucan Sam underwear right now. If you want a little sneak peek, see, check this out. I wasn't even planning on doing that, but anyway, I love Toucan Sam. So anyway, my sister knows I love Toucan Sam. She saw this down there and she took a chance that I didn't already have it, and she brought it back for me. So I thought that was great, because even though this isn't the original Toucan Sam Funko Pop, I think that one is actually kind of expensive on the secondary market. This is him in kind of a flying position. So he's got like a clear display base so his feet are up and his wings are up. Again, you'll see it in the side-by-side here. So that's a fun little variation of Toucan Sam, and it's just a character I'm happy to add to my collection. This is the kind of thing, if I am going to buy a Funko Pop every once in a while, this is the kind of thing I would buy, because it's a standalone piece. It's not like a big commitment to buy, like if they started doing, G.I. Joe Funko Pops, which they already do. But, that could go on forever because they can make hundreds of G.I. Joes. But Toucan Sam is really kind of a one-off. Just because I have one cereal guy doesn't mean I need all the cereal guys, because my love was for Toucan Sam specifically. So anyway, this guy's fun. So thanks to my sister Katie for bringing me this home as a souvenir from Miami. Now, this next figure actually just arrived on my doorstep about 2 hours ago. I've been doing quite a bit of my Christmas shopping online at Amazon. So like I bought a new mystery novel for my mom. I feel comfortable saying that because my mom doesn't watch these videos. But I've bought a few things for my wife, a few things for my friends. Anyway, so I was shopping for Black Friday deals last week, and there really wasn't a whole lot that stuck out to me, but I did find like 3 or 4 items to gift to others. But while I was on there, I came across this toy, and I've considered buying this one in the past. So I thought, well, he's marked down. He's only $20 Canadian, which was a good price for him. So I thought, what the hell? I'll treat myself to something. Anyway, that Amazon package just arrived on the doorstep just before I started shooting. Anyway, so this here is Greedo from the Star Wars Black Series, but this is him in his retro paint job. So if you know Greedo, he's one of the Cantina aliens. He's one of the more well-known ones because he actually had a real scene where he talks to Han Solo, and he tries to kill Han Solo. Han Solo ends up killing him. I always loved Greedo. Now, the vintage toy from Kenner, as I alluded to earlier, about how toy companies sometimes have to make figures based on concept art and things, and it doesn't end up matching the final product. That was definitely the case with a lot of Kenner Star Wars figures from the 80s, because sometimes they only had a picture like this of a character and they didn't know what he looked like from the waist down, so they would make up something and it didn't match the photos you would see later in books and stuff, or if you watch the movie and you do see Greedo's pants and you're like, hey, he's got black pants, he doesn't have green pants. So a lot of those Kenner Star Wars figures from the 80s had really drastic variations in their design and their outfits from what appeared on screen. So Greedo, the original 80s figure, which I loved. Now, technically, my brother Doug had Greedo when we were kids, but I always loved the look of Greedo. I do have my own 80s Greedo in my collection now. Anyway, I always loved this figure. I love the bright green. But every Greedo figure they've made in the last couple of decades, pretty much since the 90s, they've been much more screen accurate because they know that's what fans want. So now every time you get Greedo, he's in a much lighter kind of green outfit, and he's got this kind of brown orange vest over top, which you can see that's what he wears in the picture there. But what they've done with this figure, they previously released a Greedo, like a 6-inch Greedo like this in the Black Series in this outfit. The light green, the brown vest. I've got him on display over there in my Star Wars area. It was a fine figure. I was happy to have it. But then they put out a couple of these retro color, I guess we'll call them, figures that were based on the old Kenner figures. I just thought these things were so cool. It makes me feel so nostalgic to see these better sculpted figures, but in the old retro colors. So I bought the Obi-Wan retro color figure. I think they also did a Jawa, and I knew they did Greedo, and I think that might have been it. Maybe one or two more. I don't remember. But yeah, these things were hard to get. They were exclusives. These are not the kind of things you could find in stores. I forget where they were originally exclusive to. It might have been Amazon, but I think they sold out very quickly initially. I got lucky to get Obi-Wan. I think I got him from Big Bad Toy Store, but he cost quite a lot. He was like, I think $45 compared to one of these figures, which would normally be 25 to 30 bucks at the time. Plus I had to pay for the shipping and all that stuff. So he ended up costing me over 50 bucks. This guy here was $20, and with Amazon, it's free shipping, so I got him straight up. And yeah, I think he's great. I love these colors. I don't know if I'm going to open him, to be honest. I guess you'll know that if I shoot a split screen and he's open, then I opened him. But my retro card Obi-Wan, I have not opened. I kind of kept it on the card because I just like the aesthetic of it. It's not like you can't see the figure nice and clearly anyway, so I might do the same with Greedo. I don't know. But anyway, I'm happy to have this. I think it's pretty cool. Okay, we're going to jump back to Godzilla for a second. Now, I collect Godzillas from Super 7 primarily these days. There are a couple other companies making Godzilla toys. Most of them are high-end stuff. So Super 7 is high-end, but it's not as high-end as, say, the SH Monster Arts, Figure Arts, whatever they're called. Their figures tend to be more expensive. Hiya Toys is a company that makes really nice high-end Godzilla toys, but for more affordable prices. I just got my first ever Hiya toy recently. I reviewed the Muto figure in one of my recent videos. So I'm hoping to get more of them. I have some more on pre-order. And then there's Playmates. Playmates is making the figures based on the new legendary MonsterVerse movies, which would be your Godzilla vs. Kong, your Godzilla X Kong, Godzilla King of Monsters. So pretty much ever since Legendary's been making these American Godzilla movies, they've been making the toys. And when it comes to Playmates, these are, regular retail, mass-produced for children toys. So they're not really, for collectors. A lot of guys like me probably don't pay a whole lot of attention to them, because especially if you're buying these high-end stuff, a Playmates figure does not display well with like something from Super 7. But anyway, I had to pick up this dude. This is a Playmates figure, and you know what? I'm forgetting his name right now. I'm blanking on it. But anyway, this is a kind of a dragon character, kind of like a water dragon that was featured in the newest movie, Godzilla X Kong, and he was also featured in the comic book like prequel to the movie. And now I think this is another character where the toy does not really match what we saw on screen. Like this guy here is primarily green with purple fins. I believe the character, when we saw him in the movie, he was much more purple and pink, a lot less green. So this toy would have been based on more kind of concept art rather than the final product. But anyway, this is the first time this character has been done by any company. Now maybe Hiya Toys or even Super 7 or somebody might do one in the future. However, I don't know if I would want to buy one of these figures from one of the high-end companies because I don't have much of an attachment to this character. He had kind of a brief appearance. He was not the main villain. So yeah, would I pay $150 to get a nicely detailed version of him? I don't know. Like with Shimo, the new white kind of ice dragon that was introduced in the movie, I bought a Playmates version of Shimo, but I also pre-ordered the really nice looking one from Hiya Toys. But Shimo was like a key character from the movie, who played like kind of a vital role. This guy, not so much. So I don't know if I would need the nice high end. So just to add this guy in my collection in any way, I was kind of happy to get this cheap little Playmates version, because this guy is like 20 bucks. And he's cool. He's got multiple points of articulation. The paint job's nice. It's just something unique. It's nice to add new characters instead of just the same old Godzillas and King Kongs over and over again. Yeah, he's got a hinged jaw. So, they can do that for 20 bucks. I don't know why Super 7 can't do it for over 100. But anyway, he's fun. I like him. All right, so now we're going to jump over to Masters of the Universe for a second. So you can see here, I have a big collection of Masters of the Universe. There's a whole bunch of them here that you guys can't see. But I have a really big collection of the Masters of the Universe Classics figures, as well as the Masters of the Universe Origins line, which is the current line. Now, the Origins line seems to be winding down. You don't really find it at retail anymore. A lot of the new figures that are coming out are online exclusives. A lot of them have been exclusive to Mattel's collector website, Mattel Creations. So when these new figures come out on Mattel Creations, they have like a specific street date. They're like, you have to be online at noon on this date to get this figure. And they usually sell out pretty quick. So a couple of weeks ago, there was another Mattel Creations figure. I managed to snag myself one. So this here is Geldor. Now, I usually review my Masters of the Universe Origins figures in their separate video, because usually I have a whole wave of them to talk about. But I don't know if there's any more Masters of the Universe coming until at least next year. I'm expecting to get MOTU sometime early in 2025. But I figure, what the hell, I'll just review this guy now. I don't have a whole lot to say about him. He is a character that first appeared in the mini comics in the 80s, but he never had a toy in the vintage toy line. But then they did make the first ever Geldor in the Masters of the Universe Classics, which is like the 7-inch toy line. So I had this guy. I thought he was pretty cool. Didn't really think I needed another version of him. But here we go in the Origins line. So you can see he's a little smaller. He's more like 5.5 inches. These figures are done in the style of the retro 80s toys, just with increased articulation, such as elbows and knees and wrists and things like that. So anyway, I'm happy with him. He's kind of an oddball character. He came with a shield, and he came with 3 different axes, which is way more axes than anybody needs. But yeah, he's cool. Got a crazy old guy mohawk. He looks very much Masters of the Universe. And he's not anybody to get too excited about, which kind of sucks that he's an online exclusive, because those figures are definitely more expensive. I think he cost me about 45 bucks when all was said and done. Not the end of the world, but he's such a simple style figure that I don't really like paying that much for these things. When these were available at retail, you could find them for 20 bucks or less, and that's it's much easier to stomach for a figure like this, because it's just kind of basic. But anyway, he's a cool character. I was happy to get him. So that's Geldor. Okay, we're at I think about the 40-minute mark, and I still have a lot of figures to talk about, so I'm going to have to speed things along here. So let's talk about some Super 7 ReAction figures. So ReAction figures are the little 3 3/4 inch figures. They are done in the style of the old Kenner Star Wars figures, which means they have 5 points of articulation. Their arms move like this, their legs move like that, and their heads turn side to side. There's no, you can't put their arms out to the side. You can't have them looking up and down. They have none of that modern articulation. So that's kind of what makes these characters fun, is that they're retro. They're supposed to remind old guys like me of the toys we played with when we were kids. So I have a bunch of them. I've done plenty of videos about ReAction figures. This is kind of a weird little mix of figures that I have here. So I've been buying the Transformers ReAction figures since Wave 1. I pretty much have all of them. I have skipped a couple of repaints. I skipped the Beast Wars figures, because that's not really something I'm into. I like the Generation 1 classic Transformers. One of the ReAction figures I already have, I think 3 times over, is Optimus Prime. I have the regular red and blue Optimus Prime. Then they released a Christmas version where the blue parts were painted green, and he had a little Santa hat on. I bought that. Then they did a Halloween version where he's orange and black. I bought that as kind of a fun novelty. So now they repainted the figure 2 more times, and I've got this black Optimus Prime, which I forget what they call him on the package, but I think this character is usually known as like Nemesis Prime. Now, there is some probably subtleties that I'm missing. I think Nemesis Prime usually has like purple windshields and not red, so maybe that's why this isn't Nemesis. I don't know. But anyway, it's a black Optimus Prime. I would consider this to be like an evil version of Optimus Prime. Regardless of what you name him or what you call him, I think he's pretty cool. It's a fun sculpt to begin with. And I don't know if I need to buy every Transformer in a bunch of different color schemes, but Optimus Prime is just such an iconic look. And the fact that I already have a nice little collection of those three, getting them again in black was kind of cool. And I also get this version, which is a nice polar opposite, as I got him in white. And as you probably are aware, the white version of Optimus Prime, this is based on the vintage Ultra Magnus action figure back in the day. Because, you know, Ultra Magnus, even though it was never portrayed this way in the cartoons, Ultra Magnus was totally his own unique character. But in the toys, you bought an Optimus Prime figure, the one that you already had in red and blue, except now he was white, and you just added a bunch of snap-on pieces of armor to make him look like the bigger, more bulky version of Ultra Magnus. So they've already released an Ultra Magnus in the ReAction figure line, so the version of him with all the added armor. But this is basically a ReAction figure of just the inner toy from the 80s. And I think it's a cool look. I like it. So, plus getting the white and the black one together makes for a nice little, you know. Anyway, another one they got is, I think they call this one Rumble, or do they call it Frenzy? I can't remember. But Soundwave, he's the Decepticon that turns into a cassette tape, or a Walkman. And he always had a bunch of little Transformers that turned into cassette tapes that could, you know, be ejected from his chest. So he had Ravage, which was the panther, and he had Laserbeak, which was the bird. But anyway, he had a couple of little dudes, which were Rumble and Frenzy. Now there is some debate on over who is who, because the characters in the cartoon, I think Rumble was the red and black one and Frenzy was the blue one, but then when you bought the toys, the names were reversed. So yeah, fans always kind of debate over which one is which. I think this one was listed as Rumble, and Super 7 had previously released the blue one as Frenzy. Either way, this is a cool little character. I always really liked these guys. They're fun, and it seemed like a real no-brainer. These Optimus repaints you can kind of look at as a bit of a cash grab. But when it comes to these characters, they were introduced in the lore from the very beginning. So even though this is an exact repaint of the previous Frenzy figure, I don't really see it like a cheap repaint, because it's supposed to be another character, and they've always existed as like twins, essentially. So I would have been annoyed if they had only ever given us Frenzy and never gave us Rumble, because it's like, come on, guys, it's such a quick little paint job, and I want the pair of them. I kind of feel the same way with the Seeker Jets. Because if you know your Transformer Seekers, the core group is a group of 6. 3 of them, there's Starscream, and the other 2 look just like him. They're basically clones of Starscream. And then you've got 3 of them that are Coneheads. And of the ReAction figures, we have gotten Starscream, and we've gotten Dirge, who's a Conehead. And like you could easily repaint Starscream into Skywarp and Thundercracker, and you could repaint Dirge into Thrust and Ramjet. It seems like such an easy thing to do, but it's been a year, 2 years. I don't know why they haven't turned those sculpts. Because if they fizzle out on making Transformers ReAction figures, which sometimes seems to be the case, they don't really seem to be investing in too many new molds. Like, come on, give me the Seekers. It's easy. But anyway, here's another repaint of a figure I already have, but this one's pretty cool. This is Devastator in his original colors. I think they call it the Wrecking Crew. And this guy, he came in a cool little box here, which I have. You'll see it in the insert. Most of these Transformers come on blister cards. The original Devastator that I have in the green and purple, he came on a blister card. But this guy comes in a cool box, which is reminiscent of the boxes that Transformers came in the 80s. So yeah, they call this the Wrecking Crew version of Devastator. So you can see he's yellow, he's orange with a little bit of blue. What this is based on is, if you're a Transformers fan, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but the Transformers that we know in North America, it's made up of a bunch of different transforming toy brands from Japan that weren't connected in Japan. In Japan, they weren't so concerned with having a storyline. So some company was making trucks that turn into robots, another company was making cassette tapes that turned into robots. And Hasbro came along and said, we'll take all of it and we'll make a storyline so it all works together. And in doing so, they changed the names, or they added names. They changed the color of some of those original Japanese toys. So the original Constructicon figures, before they were known as the Constructicons, were yellow and orange. When Hasbro brought them over to North America, they named them. This guy, he forms Devastator, and he was green and purple. So I already have the green and purple version, which is what most North Americans kids know. But yeah, this is based on the original Japanese toys, and I didn't maybe need it, but it's pretty sharp looking, and it's a fun figure. You can see he's quite a bit bigger than your standard ReAction figure, pretty much double the size. Very cool. I like him a lot. All right, more ReAction figures. I'm not a big fan of blind boxes, but I do buy some. I have a lot of the Godzilla blind box figures. I collect the Universal Monster ReAction figures. I have a bunch of them in different color variations. Anyway, this holiday season, Super 7 put up these Universal Monster blind boxes. Now, there's only 4 figures available, and on the side here, you can see your chances of getting them. So the Creature from the Black Lagoon, you've got a 4 in 12 chance. Frankenstein and the Mummy, a 3 in 12 chance. And the Invisible Man, a 2 in 12 chance. So I wanted all of them. I really wanted the Creature from the Black Lagoon, which is the easiest, most common one to get. And I wanted the Invisible Man, which is the hardest one to get. And these things, I think they're on Super 7's website for $15 American, but that's close to $25 Canadian, plus when you tack on the shipping and the customs. Like, these figures are not cheap. This cost me like $30. So to order something and you don't even know what you're going to get, I could have got the exact same figure twice or 3 times if I bought 2 or 3 boxes. So anyway, I bought 2 of them. So I took my chances and I hoped for the best. Anyway, of these 2 blind boxes, I got the Invisible Man, who looks pretty cool in his red and green Christmas robe, and I got Frankenstein, who, again, you can see he's got a matching red and green outfit. They look pretty great together. They look pretty festive. I can display them with my Christmas Optimus Prime and his red and green and his Santa hat. So yeah, very cool. I like those guys a lot. So after I ordered them, I was like, okay, cool. I got one of the ones I wanted, but I didn't get the Creature from the Black Lagoon, and he is the most common one to get. So I thought I would take my chance and I would order one more. It came, and it was a duplicate of the Invisible Man. So I guess I'm lucky that I got the rarest one twice, but I really didn't have much need for a duplicate. Anyway, more on that later. Another couple of figures I got here is Vampira. So I'll be honest, I don't know much about Vampira. She is kind of like Elvira before Elvira was Elvira. She was like a TV hostess back in, like, I think the 60s, maybe even earlier, where, you know, she would introduce old horror and sci-fi movies, kind of like what Elvira did in the 70s. And but yeah, the main reason I know who she is from the movie Ed Wood, which was a Tim Burton movie about the director Ed Wood, who is basically known as the worst filmmaker of all time because he made these really cheesy movies, most notably Plan 9 from Outer Space. So when you watch Ed Wood, it's about the fictional making of Plan 9 from Outer Space. I love Ed Wood. I've seen it many, many times. The actress that plays Vampira in the movie, beautiful actress, and it kind of made me, fall in love with Vampira, even though this was just an actress portraying her. Anyway, I have since seen Ed Wood. I have seen the original Plan 9 from Outer Space, which stars the real Vampira. So that's all I've ever seen of her. I've never seen anything else. But she just has a cool kind of gothic look. So they released a figure of Vampira in color, where the card art just said Vampira. It was just released her as like a personality. And yeah, she had like red lips and red fingernail polish and all that sort of stuff. And I've considered buying it, but I haven't pulled the trigger because she was a character where I kind of felt like I don't have a ton of attachment to her. The version I know is actually more of an actress portraying the original Vampira, so I almost felt like a poser buying a Vampira figure. But anyway, Super 7 was having their, I guess it was their Black Friday sale or something on, and they said if you spent $100 on ReAction figures, you could get another ReAction figure for free. Which basically meant if you spent $100, you get 20 free dollars. So I've been going through a process where I've been buying these little display stands for my ReAction figures. And I've been buying them like 1-2 packs at a time, and you get them in packs of 10. And there really wasn't any ReAction figures I was looking for at this time because I had just bought all these Transformer ones and those 2 blind boxes on my previous purchase from Super 7 like a week or 2 earlier. So when they announced this sale, I was like, oh man, why couldn't you guys have announced that sale like a couple of weeks ago so I could have taken advantage of it? Anyway, I thought, well, you know what? I will buy a bunch of the display stands. So I did. I bought 6 packs of the display stands. So I have 60 new display stands, which I've got. My ReAction figures have usually been in bins, but now I've got a whole bunch of them out on display here. You can't really quite see it. It's on the second little shelf here. Those are my Godzilla ones, and there's the other ones. Anyway, I've got a bunch of ReAction figures on display, which is really cool. But I didn't want to just order a whole order of display stands. That would be kind of boring to get in the mail. So I thought, what could I buy on Super 7's website? So I looked at this Vampira. They did not have the color version, which I think I probably would have preferred, but they had this black and white version, which was their secondary release of the same mold. And this one came on a Plan 9 from Outer Space specific card. So that's why she's black and white, because that was a black and white movie. So it's not necessarily Vampira, the TV actress hostess. This is the character from the movie Plan 9 from Outer Space. And yeah, it's fine. I like it. The black and white is kind of cool. It's not a big departure from the colorized version of the figure anyway. Yeah, so it's cool. She looks great next to my Universal Monsters, next to my Vincent Price, next to my Dracula. She just blends right in with those guys. The other figure I bought, so I bought my 3rd blind box from that order. That's where I get my 2nd Invisible Man. And I also bought this Oompa Loompa. Now this guy is small. He's about half the size of your standard ReAction figure. So you kind of think, couldn't he be cheaper? Or couldn't you maybe put 2 Oompa Loompas in a pack or something? But no. And there's no accessories. They couldn't have given him a giant candy cane or something to play with. I don't know. So this guy was still, $20 American, $30 Canadian, whatever. But I had to get him. You could kind of consider I got him for free because I spent all the money on the stands and my Vampira. So my free ReAction figure, I guess, was my Oompa Loompa. I just think he's kind of cool. He's based on the original Willy Wonka movie, which was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which I love. I saw that as a kid. The Oompa Loompa design is fun, and I just think he's a fun little character to have on my shelf. So anyway, I got him. Now, I have a friend, Christian, who he's a toy collector as well. We met through collecting toys. He followed me on Instagram, and he bought some blind boxes of Godzilla ReAction figures. This was like a year ago, and he ended up with some duplicates. And he reached out to me and said, hey, I know you collect this stuff because I follow you on Instagram. I got a bunch of duplicates. Would you want to buy some of them off me? And I thought that was great because I wanted the figures, but I didn't want to risk getting duplicates. So he opened up all of his extra boxes, and so I knew exactly which ones I was buying. So I bought some from him. And ever since then, we've stayed in touch. We've kind of been friends, and we've been kind of helping each other out with toys. So, for example, whenever I buy from Maddie Collector, like when I bought my Geldor here, I bought 2 Geldors because shipping was the same whether you get 1 or 2. But I bought 2, and that way Christian split the price with me, so we basically got half price shipping on this. Similarly, when we've done the same with Super 7 figures and whatnot. Anyway, I do not collect Sesame Street figures. I grew up on Sesame Street like probably most kids, but I don't really have a huge nostalgic connection to it. If anything, I prefer like the Muppets over Sesame Street because Muppets were like a little bit more grown-up version of Sesame Street. But anyway, Super 7 started putting out reaction figures of the Sesame Street characters recently. And I will admit they kind of caught my eye. They're really well done. Because reaction figures are kind of meant to be like simplified versions. So like when you have a real actor, the reaction figure doesn't really look like the actor because the paint detail is so simple. But when it comes to these Sesame Street characters, they look spot on. They look like little miniaturized versions of the puppets themselves. So when these figures came out, I was like, those are pretty cool. But I'm like, I cannot get into collecting Sesame Street. Like, come on, people already think it's weird enough that I collect this stuff. Sesame Street stuff, nah. Anyway, there was a website, I can't remember which website it was, but they had an exclusive version of the Cookie Monster reaction figure, except what was special about this one is that he's flocked. So he's fuzzy, like Moss Man from Masters of the Universe. So Christian was going to buy it because these were limited and they might sell out. A lot of online exclusives do. So he messaged me and he said, hey man, I'm going to buy this Cookie Monster exclusive. Do you want me to grab one for you? I didn't see the message on time and he was trying to make the decision quick. So he just bought two and he said, hey man, I bought a second one for you. Hopefully you want it and you can take it off my hands. If you don't, no big deal. I'll try and sell it on Facebook Marketplace. So then he got this thing and I was like, you know what? I wasn't planning on collecting Sesame Street stuff. It's just not really my jam. I really don't want to open that can of worms. And to be perfectly honest, even though the fuzzy thing is kind of neat, one of the things that I think is cool about these Sesame Street figures is the really nice detailed paint jobs. So like the regular release Cookie Monster, he's got kind of like a nice black wash over the blue fur, which brings out all the detail and stuff. So I was like, even if I was going to get Cookie Monster, I think I would prefer the cheaper standard release. So Christian was kind of like, that sucks for me then, because I'm kind of on the hook for this. I'll put it on Marketplace and hopefully somebody bites. And I was like, good luck. Sorry, man. But then I ended up with my duplicate Invisible Man that I didn't know what to do with. So I said, hey, man, tell you what, I know Cookie Monster was more expensive. I didn't really want to shell out the $45 Canadian that I would have had to pay Christian to get this. I'm like, but now I'm on the hook for $20 for this Invisible Man. If you'll swap me, I'll pay you the $25 difference and then we're cool. And so he said, yeah, let's do that. So now I knew I was going to have a Cookie Monster in my collection. I didn't have him in hand yet, but I knew the next time I caught up with Christian, we would do the swap. So I knew this was coming. Plus, if you've watched my past episodes with my co-host Chad, he was talking about how he had pre-ordered Bert and Ernie from the same line. And then I went into my comic shop where I go every week, and there is a guy named Ben who is like kind of the stereotypical comic book shop guy in that he's there every time I go into the shop. No matter what day of the week it is or what time of the day, Ben is just a customer that's always just there talking with the store owner and stuff. So anyway, I went in there and I was kind of talking with Ben and we were looking at the Sesame Street reaction figures and he was going on about how great they were. He's like, man, these are nice. I really want to get some of these. And I was like, what is with everybody I know wanting to get these Sesame Street figures? I just don't really get it. We are grown men. We shouldn't be buying Sesame Street toys. But I think it got to me. I knew I was going to get the Cookie Monster. Chad wanted them. Ben wanted them. So my comic book shop had a sale on. They had 25% off all their action figures in the store. There wasn't a whole lot that I was looking for because I usually buy things that I want when they first come out. So I was like, is there anything I can buy in the store to take advantage of the 25% off sale? And I ended up getting the Count from Sesame Street. So, we all know the Count. He's the basically the Dracula that counts. And it's a really nice figure. Like I said, it looks just like the Muppet. Like he maybe lacks some of that texture on his skin that you would expect to see on a Muppet, but he looks incredible. He does not look like a dumbed down version of him in any way. He's got a little vinyl cape, just like you would have seen on old Star Wars figures back in the day. It's really fun. His monocle is like a little clear plastic, so you can see his eye through it. Anyway, it's a really cool figure, I have to admit. And then I bought Big Bird. Again, I feel silly as a man who's almost 50 years old buying a Big Bird action figure, but there's no denying that it looks great. And it does kind of warm my heart a little bit. Like, you can't hate on Big Bird. And it's just a nice looking figure. One thing I think that's kind of weird about him is he comes with a little drinking cup accessory. So it's just like a silver cup with a straw in it. Most reaction figures don't come with accessories. like I said, the Oompa Loompa, he didn't come with any candy or anything. None of the Transformers, well, they come with a gun most of the time, but the Universal Monsters, they don't come with anything. Big Bird, I wouldn't expect him to come with anything. I don't know why he has a cup. Now, maybe it's because I haven't watched Sesame Street in 40 some years. Maybe he's a drinker now, but it just seemed like an odd accessory. So let me know in the comments if you know why Big Bird has a cup, because I don't know why. And then the last one I got here is Oscar the Grouch. Now this figure, again, I almost feel like, what am I paying for here? Because I know Oscar has arms. I've seen them. I know Oscar can come out of the can. I know he has legs. This figure, it's just a head in a can. Now there is a button on the back that you can press and you can lower his head so he sinks down in the can, and then you can close the lid. But there's no arms or anything on there. He doesn't come out. So yeah, this hardly feels like an action figure. There's really no articulation on it. But the paint job and the sculpt look fantastic. This is what I was talking about with the Cookie Monster, in that you can see the black wash over the fur, and it really brings out all the detail. And it's really impressive. Anyway, he came with an accessory too. He came with his little worm buddy there. What's his name? I knew it. It's Squirmy or something. I forget. But yeah, the little worm is something that could easily be lost because there's nowhere to really put it. I have it kind of sitting on the rim of the garbage can. There's a little ledge that he kind of fits in there, but he doesn't snap into place or anything. He's just kind of resting there very precariously. So I will have to try hard not to lose him. But yeah, that's cool. So I've got a bunch of Sesame Street figures now. I don't really know why, but I do. Okay, now we're going to talk about some McFarlane DC figures. I don't buy a lot of these. Well, actually, I buy a lot of the DC Superpowers figures from McFarlane Toys. In fact, the last episode I posted was about all of my new Superpowers figures. But what I don't buy a lot of is the McFarlane Multiverse figures, which are his like 7-inch line of figures. But this one here, it was an impulse buy the other day. I went into my GameStop and I got this dude here, which I actually forget what they call him on the packaging, but I would call him kind of composite Superman, essentially. He is a mashup of Superman and Batman. And so you can kind of see he's got like a full face mask of Batman in red. He's got a logo that's like the Superman and Batman logo mixed together. His costume is a mix of red, blue, and black. And then he's got green hands. So you can see he's got exposed skin with green fingers. And that's kind of weird, but that's an homage to the character of Composite Superman, which is a character that dates back to like the Silver Age of comic books, where there was a character who would literally split down the middle, half Batman, half Superman, and for whatever reason, his skin was green. It didn't make a whole lot of sense, but that character has existed for decades, and this was a kind of an updated version of Composite Superman that appeared in the recent World's Finest comic book by Mark Waid and Dan Mora, and it's a really great comic book. I don't read a lot of DC these days, but the World's Finest book has been really well done. And so, yeah, this was a character that appeared in the book. It was just a very brief glimpse of the character. He didn't do a whole lot. He kind of showed up, punched the bad guy, saved the day, and then he was gone. But McFarlane really latches on to any version of Superman or Batman that he can make. His motto is kind of like, if it looks cool, make it. So even if this character never appears again and really didn't do anything all that significant, McFarlane got right on it, made a figure of it. And I honestly wouldn't have even probably thought twice about skipping this, except I'm going back to my comic shop, which is called Strange Adventures, by the way. The manager of Strange Adventures, who's a good friend of mine, we've known each other for as long as I've been going to the shop, which is like 25 years. So Dave Howlett, the manager of Strange Adventures, he loves the original Composite Superman. He collects just Composite Superman action figures. He has multiple versions of it. And in fact, he just recently independently released his own comic book, which focuses on Composite Superman. It seems like an odd character for somebody to latch onto, but Dave loves him. And Dave's love of Composite Superman, I think, has kind of permeated my brain a little bit. So I don't know what's going on, but I seem to be easily influenced by guys at the comic shop these days. I let Ben talk me into some Sesame Street figures, and now Dave's in my brain. I'm thinking I need a composite Superman. So now I don't know what Dave's thoughts would be on this new version, because it definitely strays from the classic composite Superman, because this is not just a guy split down the middle. This is just kind of a weird amalgamation of the two characters. But he actually, I think he'll display nicely next to another figure I have from McFarlane Toys, which they called Speeding Bullets Batman or Speeding Bullet Superman, which was based on a character that was also Batman and Superman mashed together. He had a full face mask. You'll see it in the split screen. I didn't think that combination worked as well because it looks too much like regular Batman. The bat symbol is in the shape of the Superman logo, and that was kind of it, really, to make it stand to the ties to Superman. This one, obviously, with the red and the symbol, is much more Superman-y with the yellow and red colors. Anyway, he's cool. I like him, so I picked him up. Kind of a random purchase. And then I was in my Walmart last week, and they seem to have the same old DC Multiverse figures month after month. They don't ever replenish their shelves. But anyway, I went in there the other day. They had a 3-sided standee, and the figures were like $12. Usually these figures are like $30 in Walmart. So they had a ton of figures for $12. I flicked through them. Most of them I wasn't interested in. It was a couple of the characters from the Black Adam live action movie. It was a couple of like Batman variants, and there were some characters. It just wasn't anybody I was really interested in. But they did have Grifter. So this figure is a couple of years old. I really had considered buying it when it first came out. Grifter is kind of a cool character. He's got kind of an interesting history in that he started out as a character from Image comic books, but then the creator, Jim Lee, he left Image and he started working at DC. He's like the executive editor or something like that. Anyway, he brought his characters over from Image, which was a company he co-owned, and they became DC characters. Grifter, I thought, was always the coolest character from his creator-owned book, The Wildcats. He looks cool. So yeah, it's a good figure, but I'm not going to waste too much time chatting about him because he is a couple of years old at this point. But yeah, it's a nice looking figure. So I was happy to get him for so cheap. Now, typically when it comes to Marvel Legends, I usually get them in full waves, and I prefer to do videos just focused on Marvel Legends. But I have three Marvel Legends figures here to talk about today, and I don't think I'm going to get any more before the end of the year. So if I want to do a quick review of these guys, I think I have to throw them into this miscellaneous video. So first up, I've got Quicksilver. So this guy here, he started out as a bad guy on the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and then he was in the Avengers, and then he was in X Factor. I don't really know where he is these days. He's basically been a heroic character for the last several decades, but he's kind of a dickhead good guy character, almost like an anti-hero, I guess you could say. I've never been a huge fan of Quicksilver, but because he is such an important member of multiple teams, I have wanted to get a version of him to add to my collection. I actually considered buying one of the MCU versions of him. Aaron Taylor Johnson played him in Avengers Age of Ultron, so I almost bought that version, although I would always prefer to have a comic book version than an MCU version. So I'm glad I held out hope, because there was a version of this character previously released in his gray outfit, which I would argue is his more iconic outfit, but it was in a 3-pack with Scarlet Witch and Magneto, which is his father and his sister. I didn't really want the other figures from that pack, so I did not buy it. And so yeah, I was hoping that he would get an individual release. They put him out in his green outfit. So again, it's not as iconic as his gray, I don't think, but I might like it better. It's just it's a little brighter. It's a little more interesting to look at. This was a Walmart exclusive. So yeah, he wasn't part of a wave or anything. He came on the old retro style card. Yeah, I was happy to get him. It's a fine figure. I like his little crazy little hairdo there. I don't know what's going on with that, but hey, fun figure. Glad I got him. Then there has been a new wave of figures called Secret Wars. Now these figures are based on the old Secret Wars toys from the 80s, which was really the only Marvel toys you could get in the 80s based on the Secret Wars comic book. Now, in the toy line, which was based on the comic book, they had mostly the main characters. So you could get Spider-Man, you could get Captain America, you could get Iron Man, you could get Wolverine. So it was like a lot of their heavy hitters. There was a couple of like oddballs that fit into the line, but the line didn't go very deep anyway. Like it was, I want to say maybe 25 figures in total. And considering how many different characters are in the Marvel Universe, that was barely scratching the surface. Anyway, this new line of Secret Wars figures from Hasbro is Marvel Legends, and they gave us a bunch of those core characters as well. So they gave us Spider-Man, they gave us Captain America, they gave us Iron Man, and they gave us Wolverine. I didn't buy any of those figures because I already have plenty of all of them in my collection. And other than the fact that they came on a retro style card and came with some retro style accessories, I didn't think the figures were different enough from the versions I already have to really justify the purchase. But these other two figures in the wave, I was really excited about because these two are characters that have never had a Marvel Legends figure before, and these were characters that were pivotal to the Secret Wars storyline, and they probably should have been included in the toy line back in the 80s. So they're finally getting their due. So first up, we'll start with Titania. So she is like a big muscle woman here. So she's got kind of like a spiky purple outfit here. She looks pretty great. She's on a big buck, like a big sculpt here, so we could probably use this figure again for some other muscle women, like kind of a She-Hulk. She is primarily, I think, a She-Hulk villain, and so it's good that she's appropriately sized to battle my She-Hulk action figure. But she looks great. I don't really have any notes on this. It's a really nice sculpt. I appreciate that they did obviously put some money into tooling some new pieces for her, because these spiky arms and stuff are new. Now, they could maybe reuse some of these spiky pieces to do the Rachel Summers version of Phoenix, which is a character I've really wanted to see for years. But Rachel Summers is not a big, beefy character like that, so I don't know if these parts are reusable for her or not. Maybe. But anyway, I think this figure is great. When I first started reading comic books in 1986, one of my very first Amazing Spider-Man comic books featured Titania and her boyfriend, Absorbing Man, who are not typical Spider-Man villains, but he had to fight the pair of them, and so they've forever been kind of ingrained in my head as kind of related to Spider-Man as Spidey villains. They're really not, but because almost any character that appeared in the first year of comic books when I was starting to collect, they're all kind of in my head as maybe more important than they really are. Characters like Speed Demon and Hobgoblin. Hobgoblin's obviously a big deal, but there's a lot of characters back then that I hold in very high regard. So the fact that Titania was in one of my first comic books, I'm happy to finally have an action figure of her. The accessories they come with are these silly shields, which I don't have much use for, but these are based on the accessories that came with the vintage Secret Wars toys of the 80s. So you can see it's like a lenticular, you move it, and she goes from her civilian personality to Titania. So that's cool. But yeah, this character was first introduced in the Secret Wars comic book in the 80s, so that's why she's so important to the series. And then the other figure I got here is the Beyonder. Now, this is kind of a silly looking character. He's just got this plain white 80s jogging suit with a popped collar, and he's got this kind of 80s hairstyle, but that's how he looked. And the premise was that this guy was like a cosmic entity, and he pulled all the superheroes together to this place called Battle World so he could basically observe them and watch them fight. And he didn't actually look like this in the original Secret Wars series, but then when they did Secret Wars 2, the Beyonder decided to visit Earth to learn more about Earthlings, and he took on this human appearance, which I think was based off of Michael Jackson to some degree. And so yeah, he's in this 80s outfit with his 80s hairdo. He's kind of a dork, but he is supposed to basically be a god with, very powerful. And he gets his little shield too. So even though to just a passerby, they might think, why were you excited about this guy? He looks like a dork. It's just because the Secret Wars storylines were happening right when I was starting to collect comic books. Again, it was like 86. That was the year of Secret Wars 2. And so this character was everywhere when I started collecting comic books. So even though he hasn't appeared a whole lot of times since, he's just kind of ingrained in my head as kind of like an important character to the Marvel Universe because of how prevalent he was that one particular year. So pretty cool. All right, I've just got a few more figures I want to show you. I feel a little bad rushing through this because I feel a little weird about these figures, and I kind of want to talk about it. I don't know how much I should say, but here's the rundown. My mother said to me the other day, she's like, "Did your aunt Jocelyn contact you?" And I said, "No. Why would my aunt Jocelyn contact me?" And Jocelyn is an aunt through marriage, and I see her at holidays, but I don't see her much otherwise. And she said, "Well, she has a friend who her son passed away, and he has a bunch of collectibles, and she doesn't know what to do with them. So Jocelyn told her that she had a couple of nephews, me and my brother Doug, that were well versed in collectibles, and Jocelyn kind of offered us up to do an appraisal for her. Now, she doesn't live really very close to me, but my brother, he travels a lot because he's driving his kid all over the province to go to different hockey games. So my brother Doug offered to say, "Well, I'm in that area sometimes for hockey, so next time I'm out there, I'll swing by this lady's house and I'll take a look at her collectibles, and I'll give her an appraisal of what these are worth," because it was a mixture of comic books and toys and hockey cards. Anyway, so my brother was there just yesterday, and he was texting me pictures of the toys in this collection. And, I've since learned a little bit more about what happened there. But anyway, this guy, he was 42 years old. So he could have been a friend of mine, he's my age range. Anyway, he was murdered in his house. And yeah, so his mother is trying to get rid of his collectibles. And anyway, so my brother is sending me these pictures. And I happened to be with my father-in-law at the time. And my father-in-law was like, "Who are you talking to?" I was like, "Oh, my brother is texting me pictures from this house of this guy who'd been murdered." And my father-in-law was like, "Well, you don't want any of those figures. Stay away from those. Those have got like bad vibes and all that stuff." And I am not a superstitious person, but I agree. It feels a little bit weird to take action figures from a guy who I don't know, who was murdered in the house where these collectibles sat. Anyway, my brother was texting me pictures of them, and he's like, "Do you want any of these?" And I didn't really. He had a wide variety of stuff, and he had some good stuff. But for one, it wasn't anything I was actively looking for, and two, I felt a little weird about owning this stuff. But my brother was texting me. I didn't know if he was standing right next to this lady. He was in her house at the time, and I didn't know if she was trying to move this stuff quickly because she was hard up for some quick cash, maybe to pay for some expenses related to funerals and stuff. I don't know. So I was like, you know what? I would be interested in maybe two of those figures. You could offer her $30 for the two. I don't know if that's fair. I don't know. I don't want to undercut this lady, but I don't really have time to research this. I'm out for drinks with my father-in-law. And so Doug didn't respond to me after I said you can offer her $30. But then Doug texted me later in the day, and he said, "Here's your haul." And he showed me a picture of quite a few figures. And I was like, she gave me all that for $30? And he's like, "No, she wouldn't take any money. So she gave you a stack of, I think it was 6 figures that I have. And he himself, he got another like 6 or 7 figures. And it was a variety of things like NECA horror figures. And it was some ReAction figures from Super 7. It was some like Mego style dolls as well. It was a bunch of stuff. And so I'll show you what I've got here. So one of them, this is one of the figures I said, offer her $30 for these 2 figures. This is a NECA Godzilla figure. So NECA is the company that owned the license to Godzilla before Super 7, I think, essentially took it over. So yeah, for a while, NECA was the only kind of company on the block, at least in North America. There were still, I think, a couple of foreign companies that were making toys. But yeah, they made a bunch of these Godzilla figures. And man, I miss the days when NECA was making affordable figures. Like this guy's still got a sticker price on them of $24.99. So that's what these things used to go for. So yeah, this is Godzilla from Godzilla 1985. And I didn't have this one. I have a bunch of the NECA figures. They made, I think, 50 different Godzillas. They made a bunch from all the different Godzilla movies, and they did a bunch of repaints, such as like atomic breath versions of a lot of the ones they already did. So yeah, I didn't have this guy. And so that's cool because you guys know I'm a Godzilla collector. So yeah, to get a NECA Godzilla still in the package here, That was pretty cool. The other thing that I told my brother to offer her money for was this guy here, which he's going to look pretty silly. Here's this like naked wrestler dude. Now his name is King Muscle. Now I'm not going to pretend to know a whole lot about these guys. You'll see the label, it says Ultimate Muscle. But if you're of a kid of the 80s like me, muscle figures were very popular. Now muscles, they were little teeny, like 1 inch, maybe 2 inch figures. They weren't posable. They were just little solid pieces of plastic. There was no paint. They were kind of flesh colored, like these little pinkish little toys, but they were all kinds of little monsters, all kinds of weird characters. And there was no real rhyme or reason to it. I don't think they even had names for the most part, because you could get them in a variety of ways. You could buy muscles in like a box of 24. You could get them in a little package of 3 or 4, I think. You could buy these little plastic garbage cans that had 10 figures in it. And yeah, you never knew what you were going to get. As a kid, I didn't know how many different ones there were to collect. You ended up with a lot of doubles, but you could trade them with your friends. They were cheap, but they were fun. They had some really cool designs. So back then, it was called Muscle, which stood for millions of unusually small creatures lurking everywhere. And it was supposed to be kind of a wrestling theme. Like a lot of them had wrestling tights on, but again, it just didn't make a whole lot of sense because some of them were monsters and robots, like, I guess. So it wasn't until years later that I learned that Muscles was imported from Japan, where it was something different in Japan, just like Transformers. And I believe it was called Kanuku Man or something like that over in Japan. And in Japan, they had bigger versions of these characters. So the ones that we were getting imported to North America were basically just a little gumball machine versions of Kanuku Man. But in Japan, you could buy articulated figures and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, these figures here, which I think are from the early 2000s, yeah, it's dated 2002. So this is, I think, and they're made by Bandai, but you see they're called Ultimate Muscle. They're not called Kanuku Man. So I think this was another attempt by Bandai to sell these in America, kind of to guys like me that were nostalgic for muscle, rather than, try and sell it to me under the original Japanese branding. So these are basically the characters I grew up with, except now they're bigger, like 6-inch articulated figures, which is kind of cool. I knew these things existed, but I didn't buy them at the time, like 20 years ago when they came out. But my brother showed me that there were some of these in the guy's collection. So I thought, well, Muscle Man here, now he's called King Muscle, but I always called him Muscle Man when I was a kid. He was like the main guy. He's like the lead hero character. So I said, yeah, I would be interested in him and Godzilla for $30. So to my surprise, I got Godzilla for free. I got Muscle Man for free. He looks kind of wonky. Like his joints are pretty ugly. He's got these big silver screws in all of his joints. And he's oddly muscular and yet skinny at the same time. Like, I don't know if it's a really successful translation of the little character that I used to have. But anyway, so I've got Muscle Man. And then I also got the other guys from his collection. So this guy is called Terry Kenyon, which I think this might be the lead bad guy. Because when I was a kid, the lead villain of Muscle had horns on his head, and his name was Terry Bull. So I don't know if Terry Kenyon is like a pre-mutated version of Terry Bull or something, because he looks similar. He's got a blonde mullet, but he doesn't have horns on his head. So I don't really know what this guy's deal is. He comes with a little wrestling bell and a little mallet to ring the bell. Muscle Man came with like a trophy. Then I've got this guy. He comes with a belt. This guy's called Kid Muscle. So I think he's supposed to be King Muscle's like little brother or apprentice or something like that. He's got a very similar look, except he's got a little tuft of hair on the front of his head there. So yeah, I got him. And then there's this dude here named Robin Mask. I also had this guy back when I was a kid, when he was just a little teeny little fleshy character. I probably still have them somewhere. But yeah, he's got like a medieval knight's helmet. But here he is in full color for the first time, seeing him in blue and everything. It just brings out a whole new dynamic of these characters that I didn't know about as a kid. This guy looks like he comes with like a metal bar to smash over somebody's head. So I got him. And lastly, this guy's name is Jaeger, by the looks of it. I don't recognize him. He comes with a steel chair to smash over somebody's head. but I don't think I had this guy as a muscle when I was a kid. Some of the other guys on the back of the package, I definitely recognize all of them. So, like Warsman and Ramen Man, I had those guys as little muscles. Um, but anyway, so these guys are kind of cool. I don't know if I'm going to open them or not because I don't really know where I'll display them. I don't typically keep carded figures, but again, knowing that these guys came from another collector's collection and he's kept them carded for 20 years, obviously. This is where I feel weird, but I don't know this dude at all. But I, yeah, I want to like honor his collection. Like if he kept these in good shape, I kind of feel like maybe I should do the same. Um, and like my father-in-law, when he was like, I can't believe you would want any of those figures in your collection. I sometimes feel, especially in the case of Godzilla, where I'm a huge Godzilla fan. Um, I think it's kind of a running joke in like GI Joe communities that people will post their GI Joes that they found at flea markets or at like thrift stores, and even if the GI Joe's broken or missing an arm, people will buy a GI Joe and they'll say, you know, I found this guy at a local swap meet. I had to pick him up even though he's missing an arm because no soldier gets left behind. You know, GI Joe collectors kind of joke that we can't let a GI Joe just rot away and maybe get thrown in the garbage. We have to rescue these GI Joes from their unfortunate situations. So I know it's kind of silly, but that's sort of how I felt with like this Godzilla when I saw this in the collection. I was like, I don't know where he's going to end up. These poor guys have maybe seen some traumatic things. I kind of wanted to rescue this Godzilla and bring him to a home where he would be loved and cared for. I will probably open this guy up because he can be displayed with all my other NECA Godzillas. But anyway, so yeah, kind of weird. I don't really know how to feel about this. I wasn't expecting to be gifted all of these things. But my brother, the way he described it, because he was kind of, my mother sold it to him the way she sold it to me, is that we were going there to basically appraise these toys for this woman so she could, you know, maybe make some money off of them. But when he got there, that was not the impression he got. She was just like, I have all these collectibles. I don't know what to do with them. I want them to go to somebody that will appreciate them. So take whatever you want. Otherwise, I'm just going to carry it down to the curb. And my brother felt really weird about that too, because he's like, I could have taken so much more, but I felt guilty taking it because that's not what he thought he was doing when he went over there. He thought he was trying to help this lady out and help make her some money. But he also didn't want this stuff to just get thrown in the garbage. Anyway, so there you go. I have this stuff. His name, I believe, is Jonathan. So even though Jonathan didn't leave this stuff to me, you know, thanks, John. I'll take good care of your stuff. Yeah, that's it, I think, for this episode. It's already went pretty long, so sorry about that. Hopefully you made it right to the end. Anyway, stay tuned. I've got more videos coming up, G.I. Joe's, Transformers, then year-end, best of 2024, all that stuff. So I'll see you then. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the like button. Leave me comments below. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Ciao.